challenge we try to solve became very clear when we learned from human studies and from animal studies that when a stroke happens, the brain doesn't die immediately. It goes into agony for several hours. And the challenge for us became very clear when a few years later, a drug was invented that would actually bust that clot, which made it possible, provided there was a coordinated approach to this whole problem. It made it possible for a patient who has suffered a stroke to recognize the symptoms, call 911, be brought to an appropriate emergency room where the patient would receive the right kind of therapy, and the work for the network was cut out for itself because we now had to organize the country to respond to this availability. The impact of the work was at two levels. First of all, clinicians and scientists in Canada who had never worked together before in the field of stroke suddenly were able to come together and develop new insights into stroke. At the human level, what was very important was that because of the network's activities, a patient came into the was brought to the emergency room severely handicapped, and when everything worked, that same individual was able to go home, frequently quite normal, in a few days, go back to their families, go back to work. And the impact we calculated was in the billions of dollars to the Canadian healthcare budget, but also what the Canadian Stroke Network did became a model for the rest of the world. The Canadian Stroke Network became known as the network that put in place the mechanisms to make that happen. That was the strategy. And it wasn't Tony Hakim, it was a lot of people working together in a coordinated way. Canadian scientists and clinicians will continue to work together. Patients who have suffered a stroke, to the extent that they avoid a major impact of stroke on their brain, will not only reduce their mortality and morbidity, but also will suffer less cognitive impairment and dementia. Controlling, reducing stroke and reducing vascular risk factors is a fantastic way to reduce dementia in society.